I feel like modern society has embarked upon an exploration of the meaning of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. And this is expressing itself in many, many different ways. And many people are exploring it in many different ways. And I feel like that's a healthy thing by and large, in terms of just the principle of seeking to understand what it is. Although some of the means by which we've been exploring it and some of the patterns which we've fallen into as a society as a result of our explanation have been pretty unhealthy. And I think that that's seen just by the prevalency of failed relationships, being so prolific. And I feel like this exploration and journey has been quite necessary because there's been a long time where those roles were pretty out of balance. You had men who were really abusing their position as like a leader and like abusing their authority in many different cultures and in different ways. Sometimes that abuse was, societal, structural, where like women weren't allowed to vote, and a lot of times women weren't allowed to work and make their own money, so they were kind of like forced into a type of enslavement, basically, because it's like, well, basically, if you want to eat, you literally got to find a guy. Like, there's no other option. There's zero option. And um, that built up a lot of resentment, I think, in like Western society that women had towards a type of patriarchal society in that sense. And so you had various activist groups and movements which overthrew that dynamic by and large. And so now women are allowed to vote, and women are allowed to make money and have their own vehicles and have all of the same rights as men. And that's a good thing. And so I think that, like a lot of times when something is, like overly toxic and abusive, sometimes this pendulum swing happens and it goes to the other extreme. Like an example of this would be like the discussion between like science and religion, and how basically the Christian Catholic Church was like so oppressive to scientists and to rational thought for so many centuries that eventually, the science as we know it today was born, where they're just like, you know what, screw all subjective experience, none of it's trustworthy, we can't trust anything that anybody says, all we can do is just look at hard solid matter, because all that stuff was so bad that we're just getting rid of all of it. Not even just religion, but it's like all spirituality, all subjective experience now is out the window. And it's like, whoa, that's not actually helpful in the grand scheme of things. Like from the, it doesn't lead to the ultimate understanding, comprehensive understanding of the universe. Um, and so I think that women, you know, sort of went through a similar process where they were kind of just like, you know what, men suck. It's just like there's a lot of that going around. And a big part of like me making these videos is in hopes that I can help to heal some of those individuals who are feeling that, because I noticed there were a lot of the women who feel that way, deep down. And I'm saying all of them, but just a lot of the ones I've observed, really do actually want a relationship with men, a healthy one. And like I'll observe that, like the evidence for that, for example, is that they'll kind of be like, I hate men, and they'll go out and date still after a while of being mad about it, and they'll be like, see what, I just had another experience which confirms the fact that I hate them. You know what I mean? And this kind of just goes over and over again. And then they're just like getting madder and madder, and it's just like, I see that happening. And I'm like, okay, like how do we really broach this and really begin to heal this dynamic so that these women aren't continually having these unhappy experiences? And I think a lot of it has to do with like attraction points and psychological models and images, and understanding how to shift momentum once it started. And I think that a lot of people, they'll tend to date the same archetype over and over again, literally get the same results, and then they're like, why am I getting the same results? And it's like, well, you're choosing the same kind of guys. I mean, like ultimately. And then usually when I'll bring this up to some individuals, they'll respond with something like, well, I haven't even met a guy who's different than the archetype which I've been dating. They're all the same. And it's like, guys are not all the same. Okay. Women aren't all the same either. Humans aren't all the same. There's a lot of things that are truly synonymous. Like, you know, kind of like if you go to another country, like, you know, people smile when they're happy, you know, like, so there are things about us that are fundamentally the same. But there's such a vast spectrum of diversity throughout all of humanity. And so if you're encountering members of the opposite sex, or what, you know, mates, basically, whatever sex it is, that are kind of all the same, it's like you're doing something that's the same. Like maybe you're looking in the same places. Maybe you're looking in the same types of places. Maybe you're just drawn to the same types of things and you haven't understood what it is that you're actually attracted to in those individuals. And it might be something maybe in a healthy state that's good that you're attracted to in those individuals, but things around it are really toxic, or you've misconstrued the things you should be attracted to. And so it's like you have to really do a lot of internal assessment and analysis to be able to kind of understand, you know, why those things have happened to you over and over again, and to not just cast the blame as a blanket statement on a whole gender. Like anytime anybody does that, you know, it's really not the healthiest thing for them to do, for anybody, like themselves included. And it's not the most intelligent thing to do either. And I don't say that to be mean. It's just like, it's the same thing from my perspective as if someone says like, well, all white people are this, or all black people are this, or all Asians are this. It's like, what are you talking about? You know, like that's a very big blanket statement. And that's not generally, in my observation, been like the most accurate or helpful thing. You know, it's usually pretty misleading. Um, you know, when you say all people are like this, all people of one category, you start categorizing people in these big blanket ways. And so gender is the same way. It's like the same as if you say all women are this, or like all men are this way. It's like, it's not really helpful to you getting what you want, and it's not helpful to the society. So it's more helpful to clarify what it is that you do want. So like, say for example, you know, there's a woman who's been dating a lot of guys, and you know, the relationship she's had thus far, it's like these guys are, um, they abandon her. You know, like they're guys who just like everything's good for a while, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, bye. You know, no real reason that's good, substantial, that's given. So then the one way that a woman could respond to that would be like, oh my gosh, like, you know, all men only want sex and they don't want any relationships, or all men suck. Is like, that's not true, and it's not helpful. It's literally both false and not helpful. So the healthier way to respond to it would be something like, okay, I am looking for someone who is interested in a long-term committed relationship. That's my priority. So therefore, I am going to really focus on observing that quality. I'm going to find it. I'm going to attract it. I'm going to mold my attraction point and commune with the universe and the divine and say, I am only dating and attracting men to me who are interested in a long-term committed relationship. They're loyal, they're kind, they're generous, and they are looking for marriage and something that is healthy. Now we're talking. Now that is a healthy way to set up your attraction point. That is a healthy way to set up your psychology. That is a healthy way to begin to cultivate an image in your mind of what you actually want, rather than putting out all this energy in the universe about something that you don't like. Because the universe will still end up attracting stuff to you that you end up not liking. Because a lot of times, like, there's a reason why those women dated those guys in the first place. There's something they were attracted to. It could be that in their early childhood, they had a relationship, say, with their father that was, say, their father was a toxic individual, or they had some traumatic experience in some other way in their early childhood, and they're somehow like working out their karmatic and traumatic and emotional types of experiences through attracting these individuals. It's almost like trying to finish a sentence that was unfinished. It's like, you know, say the first person that woman dated was someone who they just had stars in their eyes for. They totally fell head over heels in love, and then they abandoned them. So then that person might attract like 4 or 5 more people that are willing to abandon them, just so they could somehow like work through the issue of like what happened the first time. And so like, if you do that, then they'll keep asking themselves like, why does this keep happening? Why does this keep happening? So you have to learn the lesson. It's like, okay, it happened because I chose someone who didn't prioritize the same things as me. I realize that now. I realize that this person was focused on other priorities. They lacked this quality that I wanted. They had this thing that I liked, but this thing I realize now this other thing that I didn't realize before. Now I know that I need that thing. So like say they were like, really charming and you like the fact that they were charming. Okay, I like the fact that this person was charming. I don't like the fact that they abandoned me. Therefore, I'm going to attract someone again who's charming. This time they're going to also be charming and interested in a committed long-term relationship that leads to marriage. Wow, you've just fixed the problem. You've literally fixed the problem, okay, by doing that. Another thing that I've seen, like a trap that women have fallen into is kind of like, well, they might be drawn to a very masculine, driven, charismatic, sexy guy, say. And guys who generally have those characteristics tend to have a lot of options in terms of like women who are interested in them. And so some of the guys who fit those characteristics might like date somebody for a minute, like have sex a few times, and then like, okay, I'm going to go on somebody else, right? So say this happens to them a couple of times, they might be like, oh my gosh, like all guys who are hot are untrustworthy because they have so many options. Therefore, I'm going to attract a guy who's not hot, who's controllable. Okay. And then they date this controllable guy, but then they're like, wow, I feel great because I know that this guy doesn't have as many options. Therefore, he's more likely to actually remain committed to me. But then years go by, especially, and it's just like they're gonna feel dissatisfied over time. They're gonna be like, man, like I'm glad that I'm in a relationship where like I'm not being abandoned, but gosh, I really like hot guys, and this guy just is not really up to my standards. Then you get like fantasies going on in the back of the head, and they'll like wanna, sometimes it can cause these problems, and so you have to go for what you want. All right. And, it is important to look at your astrology chart in Vedic astrology so you understand, like, because there are some people that do have certain placements, which are going to be like, maybe delayed marriage, maybe in some cases where they're just not supposed to get married in this lifetime. But I think a lot of times if someone really generally has the desire to be able to have a thing and it's really deep, a lot of times I think there's a pathway to getting it. And so you have to really just be very radically honest with yourself about what it is that you desire, and then create that image in your mind and just be very, very clear about what it is you want and what it is that you don't want, and to stop being kind of like grumpy about what happened before and then just like projecting that onto whatever future experience that you're going to be able to have. So, Carl Jung, who's a famous psychologist, former of depth psychology, founder of it, he talks about the anima and the animus, that within us, like as a man, we have what's called an anima, which is sort of a divine feminine archetype who we're kind of calling in and attracting as some type of like image of the ideal woman. And for a woman, she has her animus, which is the image of an ideal man. It's sort of like a male blueprint, all right? And so as women, you have to cultivate a healthy male blueprint. You have to cultivate a healthy male blueprint, which is in alignment with the qualities that you want. And what's going to happen when you do this successfully is like, say for example, you walk home from the store the same way every week when you go get your groceries, and you walked by this person who has a shop every day, and you two never really noticed each other or paid attention to each other before, but then you do this internal work, you actually cultivate the healthy male blueprint. Now your attraction point is vibrating differently. Your frequency is emitting itself in a healthier pattern. Then suddenly that guy at the shop who's actually a perfect match for you is going to be like, huh, he's just going to magically kind of drift his attention over, and he's going to notice you. And he's like, who's this person? Huh, she walks by here every day, and I just now sort of noticed her and started paying attention to her. And then the interest, the connection is formed, and he's like, I want to get to know this person. Hey. And he goes up and talks to you. Okay. And then you're like, wow, this super charming, handsome guy who's very well mannered and polite, who has, good ethics and morals, who has a good job. All of a sudden he's talking to me now, even though I saw him literally every day before. And the reason for that is because you've healed your attraction point. So be honest with yourself. That's my advice. Like, be honest with yourself. If you're honest with yourself, you're able to attract what you want better. If somebody hurt your feelings in a past relationship and you're like, well, I don't want to be with a man, like that's literally what you just told the universe now. Okay, well, the universe is like, well, she doesn't want to be with a man now. Okay, well, I guess we're just not going to bring her one. That's literally what that person just did by saying that. you know, or if they're like all men suck, the universe is like, huh, her frequency about all men say that they suck, therefore only sucky men can really kind of exist around her. They're going to be interested in her because, you know, those guys who suck are going to be like, oh, this girl, she gets with guys who suck, you know. He's going to be drawn to her because now she's a match to that guy. So you have to cultivate the frequency and the attraction point that you actually want to experience, right? And so it is important. I'm not to say, you know, like blind yourself to men's negative characteristics. You have to be aware to spot those negative things. Like this guy, I know that pattern. I know that frequency. I know that feeling. He behaves like this. That doesn't mean you need to go up and start hitting him with a stick or whatever. Just like move out the way, okay? You don't have to go around resenting all guys or anything like that. Just be discerning in your with your choices, okay? Because every guy who you've dated, who you're mad at, you have chosen. You literally chose those people. So why? Okay? So focus more on developing the clarity to see who people truly are. That's an area that's worthy of your consciousness. That's a focus that's worthy of your attention. Is okay. I was in these relationships in the past, and these guys treated me badly. That means I need to really focus on seeing more clearly because the signs must have been there. There's a way for me to feel out and sense and be aware of the nature of people. I'm going to spot this thing and I'm going to be like, okay, this is an indication that he values this, and that thing he values is not in harmony with what I'm looking for. You don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to be like, you know, you're a shitty guy. Like, no, just be like, okay, all right, that person's value is that. No problem. There's, you know, he's doing that thing. I'm going to keep my eye out and focus on who it is I'm actually attracting. Now you're not stressed. Now you're not mad. And now you're actually in alignment with getting what you want. So I hope this helps. Care about you all. And I'm looking forward to hearing about how, you know, just by doing this internal work and by being aware and by being conscious and by cultivating a healthy image, a healthy animus, or healthy anima if you're a guy, you know, all these things, like it just makes our lives better. And relationships can be wonderful and should be wonderful and are fundamentally wonderful. And I just want to see society like happier, you know, with this, you know, in all areas. So thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to talking with you more soon.